Hello students, welcome back. So today we are going to start with a very interesting chapter, The Saviour, which is our chapter number 9. So how would you feel if the person you like and trusted suddenly seems to have become your worst enemy? So how would you feel if someone you liked or became friends with or trusted so much, they actually became your worst enemy in the end? How would you feel, students? When you think he is the only means of help you have, he turns up with the very person who are after your blood. But is it really so, or he is a God-sent messenger? So did he actually break our trust, or he was a God-sent messenger? Let's see, students, in this beautiful and an interesting story, The Saviour. The sound came closer, came towards the bedroom. The door was kicked open, and stilted against the drawing room stood a tall young man, Tutu, the neighbor's son. He switched on the torch. Its beam surged through the dark room. It creeps over the floor. So the torch he was holding, the neighbor's son was holding a torch, and he was a tall young man, and he entered a room. So now what happens? It crept over the floor, and under the bed it zigzagged over the walls towards the window, glided down the curtains and travelled on. The young man took a step forward, then another. So now this neighbor's son, he is walking across the room carrying a torch in his hand, and the torch is lighting every corner of this dark room. The young man took a step forward and then another. He did not speak a word, but the girl could hear his heavy breathing as he advanced closer and closer. So there is another character in the story, which is the girl, and he is hearing him breathe very heavily. Behind her, the girl felt her grandfather fighting off another coughing lift. "Not now, grandfather," she prayed, "not now." So this little girl, he is praying that, "Grandfather, please don't cough at this moment, because the situation has turned out to be very serious now. So we don't want to make any kind of noise. So stop coughing right now." The old man put his hand over his mouth. So the old man puts his hand over his mouth to stop coughing himself in an attempt to choke off the loud sound, but in vain. So, but in vain means fail, that they actually failed. The young man heard him. He spun around and focused the beam on the old man's face. Blinded by the sudden light, the old man shielded his, what do we mean by shielded here, students? Covered his face. So, shielded, he covered his face because the beam of the torch made him sort of blind. With his arms, coughing pitifully all the while. So he was coughing, and he has put his hand on his face so that he is not blinded by the beam of the light which was coming out from the torch. Shrinking away from the intruder. So the intruder who came in, what do we mean by intruder here, students? Someone who is not welcomed in the room is an intruder. The girl stared unbelievingly at him. "Tutu," she whispered. "Tutu." Hot, angry tears swelled in her eyes. So she started crying now. And before she knew what she was doing, she was out of the hiding place. So now this girl who was hiding at a place, she came out of that hiding place unknowingly, and she started hammering. She started hitting at his chest. Whose chest, students? The intruder's chest. So she started hammering. She started hitting the chest of that intruder with her small fist. What do we mean by fist here, students? Mutti, right? "Leave my grandfather alone. Leave him alone," she sobbed. So what do we mean by sobbed here, students? She was crying and she is saying, "Stop and leave my grandfather." With a swift movement of his arm, the young man caught the girl and clamped a tight hand over her mouth. So what do we mean by clamped here, students? as we can also see in this picture, that he covered his hand over her face so that she cannot shout or make any kind of noise and stopping her. So he stiffly put his hand over her mouth. Then he kicked at the furniture, overturned the cot and smashed the lamp. So this intruder, he kicked the furniture and overturned, which means turned over the cot and smashed the lamp. Drawn by the noise and turmoil. So with all this disturbance, this turmoil, two men appeared in the doorway. Two men appeared in the doorway. What is happening? One of them roared. So the two men who appeared in the doorway, they shouted that what is happening? Have you got them? Have you got hold of the grandfather and the girl? Tell us. The girl held her breath, going in the young man's arms. So the young man who was stiffly covering her mouth, and this girl, he is struggling. So this girl held her breath. She started breathing heavily because of this. With his back to the door, Tutu shouted over his shoulders, "Nobody here. Get downstairs quick. They must be downstairs, the cowards." So what do we mean by coward here, students? Darpoke. So now Tutu is saying that I couldn't find them downstairs, so let's look for them upstairs, and they are cowards, they are darpoke people. And kicked the steel trunk with full force towards the door. So he was very angry and he kicked the trunk with a full force. The two men jumped back to avoid the trunk, turned and rushed up the stairs. The moment they were gone, the young man released the pressure around the girl's shoulders and whispered, "Listen to me with care, princess. You must go out of here as fast as you can." So this person who was holding this girl very tightly around the mouth and the shoulders, he is releasing her and he is whispering, he is saying that run as fast as you can. Climb through the windows and get into the service lane through the back door. Fast girl, get going. My mother is waiting for you. Our back door is open. So this person who was actually holding her tightly and didn't even let her move, he is suggesting her that please run as fast as you can and you will meet my mother waiting for you. "Tutu, oh Tutu," cried the girl. "Tutu, but you, what will happen to the grandfather?" So now this little girl, she is concerned about her grandfather and she is saying that what will happen to you and to my grandfather? Will you not get out of the situation? I'll take care of him. Go now, girl, run. So this young man, Tutu, he says that save your life first. I will take care of your grandfather. The young man forced her and lifted her over the window sill. "Run for your life." With a soft thud, the girl landed safely on the ground. So what do we mean by soft thud here, students? Thud means a kind of a sound. Very slowly this girl, very carefully, without letting anyone know, she carefully landed safely on the ground and was over at the back door in a second. She ran as fast as she can and she was at the back door within second. She opened the door and stepped into the service lane as instructed by this young man. Behind her, she could hear the mob rampage. What do we mean by rampage? Men behind her, they all were following her and they all were shouting. So this was the kind of rampage through the rooms. She stood in her tracks. Grandfather, what would have happened to grandfather? So now she is thinking, what would happen to grandfather? She could not leave him, could she? So now she is very confused that whether she should leave her grandfather and save her life first. So she is in a very nervous and a dilapidated position and she is standing there and thinking to herself. But Tutu's word hammered inside her head. Run, girl, run for your life. So now Tutu's words were there in her head, speaking continuously that run for your life, girl. Save your life first. The girl ran. While running, she tripped over rubbish and discarded kitchen waste. But on she ran till she reached the narrow beam of the light that fell into the lane through a doorway. So she finally reached to the place where Tutu instructed her to go. While trembling hands, she opened the door. So with trembling hands, which means shaking hands, she is opening the door and sobbing with exhaustion. So she is very exhausted and she is crying, and she fell into the arms of her waiting women. The women drew the trembling girl close and whispered in the girl's ear, "Thank God you are alive." So this woman who was waiting for her on the doorway, she whispered in her ears that, "Thank God you are alive. We are so worried about you and your grandfather. Is he coming with Tutu?" So now this woman asked the little girl, "Is Tutu and your grandfather coming along with you?" "I don't know," whispered the girl. "I don't know." So now she's crying and she's saying to this lady that, "I don't know whether they are coming or not." The girl held her gently in her arms and said, "Everything will be all right. It is all over now. Let's wait for them here." The girl did not know how long they waited and how long they listened into the night to the sound of smashing glasses, breaking woods, and raucous voices filled with hatred and aggression. So what do we mean by aggression here, students? Angry voices and hatred. So there were voices of anger, hatred and aggression. So and they were breaking the woods and ruckus. What do we mean by ruckus here, students? Some kind of disturbance was being created. The girl looked inquiringly at the women's face. Why had Tutu not come? Where was her grandfather? So now this woman has also started questioning and wondering where was her grandfather and where is Tutu? Aren't they coming soon? They could hear footsteps and low whispers. They were people coming. The girl thought that must be them. So now the girl is wondering and thinking to herself that they must be them, that these footsteps are Tutu's and my grandfather's. Was it Tutu and her grandfather? She held her breath, so she is very nervous and she held her breath, but then rushed towards the door, pulled it open and pierced into the dark back lane. She could make out two figures not very far away, one leading the another, and then their low voices reached her ears. "We are almost there, grandfather." So someone is telling her, "We are almost there, grandfather. We have made it." So someone is saying that we have almost made it, grandfather, and this person is very happy and is exclaiming that we have almost reached there and please have some strength. We have almost reached at this place. I know you have lost almost everything, but you are alive. We are all alive, my dear boy, thanks to you, returned the old man. So now this old man, grandfather, he's telling Tutu that we all are alive. Thank you, son. You, the girl and me. And then he called into the night, "Are you there, Bittiya Rani?" So her grandfather is calling her that, "Bittiya Rani, are you there? Have you reached her safely? We all are safe. And thank you to the boy who saved us, who is Tutu." So this brings us to the end of the chapter, students. I hope you all liked and found this story very interesting. Thank you.